It's Wednesday after the draft, and our coverage continues. We're going to get into a running back battle that is stewing in New Orleans. Plus, we bring the first New Orleans Saints player into the studio. You aren't going to want to miss that. Nickname might be Honey Badger. Loaded show on deck.
We are presented by PJ's Coffee and coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio. And make sure you get down to PJ's. They got the best drinks in the city. You shouldn't have coffee from anywhere else. We start our morning every single day with their drinks. The iced vanilla latte is my favorite. People told me that, I should venture out on that, but you got to stick with the classics. PJ's is a classic New Orleans staple. Make sure you go check them out. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And we are also sponsored by Ideal Market, home of the freshest produce in the city. They do so many good things for the community. They stay open during hurricanes. Their work with the people is so great that they recently got the Peter J. Larkin Award from the National Grocers Association. But just beyond the community, they also have good food. They bring fresh products at the best prices. They have the largest variety of Hispanic and international foods you will find in the state of Louisiana, and a hot deli that surpasses many restaurants in flavor of their authentic Hispanic dishes. Also, you got to cash a check, go check them out. They'll get you taken care of there. Banks are collapsing, so maybe you do want to go check them out. And we are also sponsored by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries blended in New Orleans. It is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. And last but not least, make sure you check out Firehouse Subs. Great people doing great things. Veteran Boulevard location. All right, let's get into the show.
Our draft coverage continues on NewOrleans.Football. We promised you that we would talk about running back Kendre Miller, and that is where we start in today's show. He did get drafted from TCU. He is coming off of an MCL injury, but based on some of his comments, guys, I think it's safe to say running back is shaping up to be the best camp battle, right?
Well, I mean, when you add in the fact that they've got Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller, not to use one of the worst cliches that we hear all the time, but that's a good problem to have for the Saints. I mean, it went from way too thin the last couple of years and Alvin Kamara being way too overworked to diminishing results to suddenly being like, is there enough room for all three of them?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good problem, but I think it actually is somewhat of a problem to solve. If they carry the ball 400 times next season, that was typically the number when Sean Payton and Drew Brees were at their peak. It was about 400 carries. It went up to like 465, 470 the last couple of years as they shifted more towards being a running team. But if you are at that 400 number, and let's say Taysom Hill gets 65 carries, which I think would be really, really low for him, that leaves about 20 carries per game for three guys. How do you split that up? Alvin's not going to get his 190 carries. Jamal Williams isn't going to get his 190 carries. Kendre Miller isn't going to get the carries he needs. Somebody is not going to eat in that group. Somebody's going to have to get their touches cut, or they're all going to get their touches cut. And it feels a little bit crowded. I don't know if you got room for everybody that needs to eat in that room.
Well, hey, but a good problem to have, right, Mike?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, that would be a great problem to have if that means all three of them play every game. Yeah. You know that's not going to happen at running back in general. You know that's not going to happen because of Alvin Kamara's suspension. But in the games where there are all three of them, there's a very obvious answer. Remember what Alvin can do in the passing game. Nick wrote about this in December. It's stunning how little they have been using Alvin in the passing game. And I think part of the reason was he was a one-man show. He had to do all the running, which is not the most effective way to use him. I looked up these numbers, and this is Pete Carmichael's been the offensive coordinator or part of this offense the entire time. There were 6 times in the Saints past under Peyton and Carmichael where running backs caught at least 140 passes a year. The high was 171 one time where running backs and fullbacks. The last 2 years, 85.
Yep.
You can double the number of catches. And oh, by the way, they don't have a slot receiver, and they're probably one receiver, one pass catcher down this year. So ideally, great. Let Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams take more of the first and second down work. Fresh legs, especially with the 20-year-old Kendre Miller. And remember, that Alvin can be a big part of this passing game.
Yeah. And with that, Kendre Miller, that is one part of his game that needs to continue to improve as a pass catcher. We've seen so many quotes talk about his game. He is a ferocious and angry runner, which is good to have if you do have Alvin as that dynamic role. But how do you see maybe that changing with Alvin, Jamal, and Kendre, Nick?
It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how it all blends together. They do want to get Kendre Miller more involved there, and I was watching his film today, and guys, I was watching it, and like I was like screaming in my house every now and then, like, oh my God, like he makes some plays that are just unbelievable. I think he's a really dynamic runner, and some of them were as a pass catcher. So I think there's a lot he can do on this team. I think he's going to bring some juice to this offense. Alvin hasn't had a carry exceeding 30 yards in 2 years. That's almost impossible. So look, you look at this group, what it is right now, even if they get through the season, maybe it isn't a 2017 too many cooks in the kitchen situation and they keep everybody involved. I don't think it's long-term, though, that these three guys are going to be on the team together. Kendrick Miller's here to take over, be the man. And at some point, you're going to start that transition. And if it starts now and he's your lead back this year, great problem to have.
Kendre Miller brings the juice on the field. He brings the juice in interviews, too.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into this quote, okay? He said, "I don't sit too well at backup," on WWL radio, and then said, "Even though I respect Kamara and everything he got for the Saints and everything he did, but I'm still coming for that number one." Is this the kid that maybe needs to pump the brakes and learn from someone like Alvin Kamara? Or is this one of those situations where, when is the last time a rookie running back came in and said, "I'm coming for your job"?
Well, the last rookie running back that did that was Alvin Kamara in 2017. It didn't feel like they had room for three,
No.
and he wasn't getting used enough for a month, and you couldn't deny what you saw, and they traded away Adrian Peterson. I don't think it necessarily has to be that way this year. Again, in the Saints' history, there are a lot of examples of where they used three running backs effectively. There were 4 times, and these were all in Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles years, where 3 different guys all had at least 115 touches. That can happen, but there's a clock on Alvin Kamara. There's no question about it. There already was, because he turns 28 this summer, and because his contract goes up to almost $12 million next year, $25 million the year after that, which is basically a year that's never going to exist. So if Kendre Miller's good enough, maybe he speeds up that clock. But look, I'm not writing off Alvin Kamara. I'm still, he's my odds-on favorite to be the best of the 3 this year. But Dennis Allen did say one of the main reasons that we wanted to add to the running back mix is it helps everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we want to take that workload off Alvin. The more Alvin has done, his touches went way up the last 2 years, the less effective he's been. He was most effective when they had him. They used to always call it a pitch count. That was when he was most effective.
And that gets into, is Alvin Kamara still at the top of his game? We go back to 2020. You were mentioning when fewer reps, better production. He had 21 touchdowns that year, rushed for the most yards he has in the last 4 years. He had 5 receiving touchdowns, 16 rushing touchdowns. In the last 2 years, he had 9 touchdowns in 21, only 4 touchdowns in 2022. So can this be a good thing for Alvin and get him back to the top of his game? Or do you still think he is at the top of his game, Nick?
Well, look, I don't think that he's going to turn it back to 2020. I think he's 28 years old. There's some things that you could probably look at and say that they aren't working as well as they used to, but I think he can still be an extremely quality player. I think he can be really, really good. I think that some of the overexposure with him in that role, getting too many touches, the style of football they wanted to play, I don't think benefits him and his style fully. We were mentioning it on the last podcast. Just doing more 3 receiver stuff, I think, would set up better looks for him. And you get him in those looks where there's only 6 guys in the block, the 4 defensive linemen, the 2 linebackers. And then Alvin has a little bit more space where he cuts, and now he's out on smaller guys. Whereas this season, he's running into heavier boxes. So I think all that stuff will benefit him a little bit. But I do think that it was smart for them to approach this offseason with the idea that, okay, we got to get our next back in here. And if you start to transition and it is 2017 again, and Kendre's Alvin and Alvin's Mark Ingram, and you can sustain that for a year, 2 years, I think that's an outstanding situation for them.
The suspension is looming. So when that does come, this is obviously a new look offense. Anytime you add in a new quarterback with Derek Carr, what is the challenge going to be? You still have Pete Carmichael as the offensive coordinator, despite what some fans wanted to happen in the offseason. So you do have some continuity there for Jamal Williams, who is coming in. can he be a successful running back one? Let's say Alvin misses what, Nick? How many games do you think he misses?
At least 4, maybe 6. I mean, that's kind of the precedent here. So yeah, it's probably going to be steep if this goes all the way through the court system. Yeah.
So Mike, with that, can Jamal Williams thrive in a first-year offense?
It's one of the things I liked best about signing Jamal Williams. As much as I like Kendre Miller, I don't think Kendre Miller would be ready to be every down back, pass protection. He can catch passes out of the backfield, as Nick said, but he hasn't done it a lot. There'll probably be a lot more screen passes. I would like Pete Carmichael Jr. to remember the screen game that has also disappeared at times in this offense. But Jamal Williams, just like we saw with Mark Ingram in the past, just like we saw with Latavius Murray in the past, I would absolutely trust him to have 25 touches in a game, to run, catch out of the backfield, pass protect. He is absolutely capable of doing that. You don't want him to be your number one back all year round, but if that happens for a month or more stretch, that's one of the reasons why he's such a good fit.
And Nick, with that, let's injuries happen in the NFL. Alvin has a suspension, something happens with Jamal Williams. Based on the film you've watched, can Kendre Miller come in and produce, or is that just asking too much of a 20-year-old running back?
No, I think he can come in and run right away. He's a physical runner. He's fast. He's explosive. He has good vision. He displays patience where he needs to have patience. I'm telling you, I was excited watching him. I've watched Brian Brzee now. I've watched Foskey now. Miller was the guy that kind of had me standing up. It was I just enjoyed watching all of his snaps from last season. I think he's really good. I think he can do that stuff. Mike makes a good point with the pass protection. I think that's some of the stuff where it would be a little bit of a learning curve. But look, their running backs didn't block well last year. I thought that was one of the biggest issues with Alvin's game, is that he gave up a lot of pressure last year. And that's something that they need to be better at overall. Hopefully Jamal Williams helps with that. Kendre will probably pick it up in time. But yeah, I think that would be a little bit steep for him. But carrying the ball, he's good to go. He's ready to compete.
The Saints don't pick up offensive lineman Cesar Ruiz's 5th-year option. He's had some bouts with injuries. Production wasn't necessarily there when he first got to the Saints. Is it a matter of the Saints being concerned about both of those things, one of those things, or is it that they really like Nick Saldiveri?
I think both, but choice C above all else. That 5th-year option would have cost $14 million. And Cesar Ruiz has not done enough to prove he's a $14 million guard. I would not be surprised if they still wind up signing him long-term and Saldiveri could replace Andrus Peat, who I think is definitely in the last year of this deal. But I don't know that the Saints will rush to do that, because unfortunately Cesar Ruiz just finally had his best year. They need to see it again. And major foot injury in the final game of the season, which is really unfortunate for his growth. They need to see him healthy. They need to see him playing at the same level as he did last year. If he does both those things, I bet he does get that extension.
Yeah, you just can't do that. Let's run down the list right now. Chris Lindstrom, $20 million. These are right guards, top 5. Brandon Scherf, $16.5 million. Wyatt Teller, $14.2 million. If they gave Ruiz the option, he would be the 4th highest paid right guard in the NFL, above Zach Martin. If you got a household name at guard that everybody knows, Cesar Ruiz should not be making more money than him. So yeah, absolutely, they could not do that. And I do think that he played better last season. There was a lot of growth. We celebrated the growth, but I think the growth was celebrated through the prism of what we saw from him. I think that he can still be a lot better. There were some games that were iffy. There were some games that were really good. Overall, though, he allowed 14 pressures and 3 sacks. 21, it was 32 pressures, 6 sacks. So definite growth there, but the way he kind of got talked about last year, I think maybe overhyped him a little. He's just a solid player at that position, a solid starter. I think there's still room for improvement. Definitely can't pay him $14 million for that.
You mentioned sacks. The Saints defense last year were tied for 5th in sacks. They were still a top 5 defense, but they were 24th in run defense. We know the Saints, if they're going to be in any category, they like to be a good run defense. A lot of these stats show that they were maybe better than they were last year. What is kind of that missing piece going into this season?
Run defense, more pressure, absolutely more turnovers. I mean, there's not really a category of defense where I don't think they took a step back last year. In the end, the numbers kind of balanced out. They got there with the sacks. It didn't feel like it. The run defense never quite got there. The secondary played a lot better down the stretch. But look, I think that's why we talked about building that defensive line back up was so important. It has to start with the run defense. It has to start with the pressure. And, Marshawn Lattimore healthy all season. They need to have the secondary being kind of the driving force of this team, and those turnovers need to come back. That was the most stunning number of all of them last year.
Am I crazy, or did it seem like maybe they weren't that good last year despite the numbers? Is that the feel here?
No, and I think they referenced that too in a lot of interviews with the media. Tyrann Mathieu even saying last year we're just not that good right now, and so I think that's fair.
Yeah, it just didn't feel that way. There were no dynamic plays. Like, you need some dynamic stuff happening. There were a lot of games that we watched and covered where you go back and you look at it at the end of the game and it'd be like, wait, this quarterback only passed for this many yards. And that's a credit to them. They were shutting guys down, but it didn't look like what the numbers tell you it was. The numbers that they had last year, they matched up with previous Dennis Allen defenses last year, didn't make sense. So I don't know. You look at the numbers and you see the wholesale changes. I think you're right that the organization maybe does agree with that perception more so than what they put on a stat sheet.
So what is the ideal situation for the defense next year presented by Ideal Market to get things corrected?
Start faster. That's absolutely true. We're obviously going to talk to Tyrann Mathieu this afternoon. He was part of a unit that wasn't itself for the first half of last season. Part of that was injuries. It was a new cornerback alignment every week for the first 8 weeks of last season. Alontae Taylor came on later. Marshawn Lattimore got healthy later. Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May finally started to work together. If we're going to boil it down to one thing that would be ideal, how about that is a top 3 secondary in the NFL from week 1?
Yeah, for me, it's get some sacks without having a stunt or design blitz or something like that. Just have somebody that can win some one-on-ones. Get the turnover. Like, please get an interception. Just have a quarterback throw a ball to somebody at some point where they're just standing there. And I think that's just one of those things that like happens to good teams. In 2017, when they were a good defense, like the Marshawn Lattimore interception where the ball just landed on his backside and they grabbed it. Like, things like that tend to happen when you are a good team with momentum. They never had momentum last year. So it's just, for me, just simply be better and be more dynamic.
And we're going to get into all of that with Tyrann Mathieu. Hopefully he answers some of our questions. Welcome for the first time into the NOF studio, Tyrann Mathieu, 3-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, the Honey Badger. We could go on and on, but welcome back to New Orleans and welcome to our studio.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me.
What's it been like to be back in New Orleans now for a full year and kind of getting acclimated back into the city, back with family and friends?
Nah, it's been great. As far as that go, I've been kind of having to like readjust my diet. You know what I mean? That's probably like the hardest part. But it's great to be back home.
That's awesome. And we know this time last year, a lot going on, right? With training camp, OTAs, things like that. How will this year look different for you now that you are here and you are going to be able to be a part of all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, well, I feel like mostly, I have a foundation now. I didn't sign until, after the draft, last year. So I missed a lot of the off-season workout program. So it's been kind of cool to be, in the building this past month, just getting to know the guys again. And like I said, just continuing to try to build on that foundation.
How much different do you think this year will be for you, given that you do have that momentum this offseason and then going into camp and everything, just having more of that time together with the team? And how do you think it maybe affected you last year not having it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I expect it to be a much better season, for me, from beginning to finish. I think when I signed, obviously it was exciting to come back home, but it was a transition. I think emotionally, spiritually, I had invested so much in Kansas City. And so, and even with the family dynamic, like they was kind of torn too about leaving Kansas City. So, just having to kind of juggle all that. But I feel like this go around, definitely in a better place, emotionally, spiritually, and just excited, man.
How did you deal with that, the emotional transition and all that?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I think a lot of people, especially people that know me, people in my family, they kind of consider me, the strong one, the one that can kind of, battle anything or overcome anything. But, I think at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have our moments where we may need a break, we may need a breather. But I was thankful and grateful too for the Saints, because I had missed the first 5-6 days of camp. And I think, a big part of that was, just me trying to, just transition,
Is it tough having to be that guy for your family all the time? That's the strong guy carrying all the weight. And I'm guessing coming back here, you probably felt a little bit more of that burden.
Yeah, like I said, it was kind of like the best of both worlds, you know what I mean? Because, on one hand, what an opportunity, obviously it's exciting, to come back home and play in front of family and friends. But, like you said, it comes with, its stress. It comes with its challenges. So just thankful, man, that I was able to kind of get through that. And, like I said, just always continuing to surround myself around good people, people that I can lean on and people that can, kind of push me forward.
I know it was challenging for you, but how did the community embrace you back? Was it more of that embracing you being back in New Orleans, or was there maybe a little give and take there for the first year?
You know what? I think it was amazing. I think, everywhere I went, and, I live on the North Shore, so I'm not like in the city too much, but when I do come, in the city, it's all love. And I think it's always been that way. And, I think football aside, I think a lot of these people just happy to see me doing good, having beautiful kids and, just being that type of person.
Now that you have been back, looking at what all the offseason moves the Saints have made in the draft, undrafted free agents, Derek Carr, what's your impressions of where the team sits now compared to what it did just 2 months ago?
Man, I tell you the truth, it's exciting, you know what I mean? And, last year, man, like we were in so many games, and it was like a play here or a play there, maybe a missed tackle here or a drop ball there, and I think that added to us, losing 10 games. Like, but, I think, foundation-wise, like, we have a great team. And I think, anytime you can add, young guys that can, get to the quarterback or you can add a quarterback that can, see the defense and know where to go with the ball and, put it in his playmaker's hands. Like, I expect us to be much better, this year.
You've played Derek Carr several times. You used to be in the same division. What's the scouting report?
Oh, man. I think the scouting report, honestly, is, a veteran quarterback, a guy that can, make every throw. I think he's, underrated, as far as getting outside the pocket. Even though he considers himself a pocket passer, like, I mean, he took off on us a couple times. You know what I mean? So he could definitely read defenses. And like I said, like, he knows where to go with the ball. Like, he's going to get the ball in his playmaker's hands. Like, even if it's a check down to Kamara, like, he's going to get him the ball and let him do what he has to do with it.
No, I know some of the newcomers who I see you guys going back and forth about basketball.
Yeah.
First, who's the best basketball player on the team? But secondly, tell us about Colin Saunders too, just his athleticism and everything.
Oh man, well I'll start with Colin, man. Obviously we won a championship, in Kansas City together, and he's always been one of those guys. He's kind of like me, right? Like in a sense, he's always been undersized, probably undervalued, but I think he's sneaky athletic. I mean, any guy that's 300 pounds, like a backflip,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, hey, you might got something going on. So, but he's going to be one of those guys in the locker room, man, that just picks everybody up. Like, he never has a bad day. You know what I mean? Even when he's venting on Twitter, like, trust me, he's smiling behind it. You know what I mean? So, he's a good dude. He's good for the locker room. And like I said, he's one of those guys that's really sneaky athletic, So I think that'll be, a help for us. I think as far as the best basketball player, I gave them a good taste, yesterday.
Okay.
And I haven't really been playing basketball as much, because I got like 2 ACL tears. So it's like, like I'm 30 years old now. Like, I don't got time to be running around with y'all. So, but I had to get them a little dose yesterday. So I think all of them recognize now, like, I was like Derrick Rose, before his ACLs. You know what I mean?
So you guys are on the real court, though. It's not just a little locker room shoot around. Like, you guys are actually out there right now.
Nah. We be running around, at the Pelicans facility. So, it's legit.
Did Lonnie get out there? I saw he wanted a game
today.
today.
He came in late. But first, me and DeMario, we won like 7 games in a row. So, me and him, we in our 30s. So we like, we like, oh man, come on, man, my feet hurt. So he come in there all late. And he's just like, oh, I want to see what you got. And I was like, bro, I just won 7 games in a row. He was like, no, don't take your shoes off. So I'm like, bro, all right, I put my shoes back on, and 3 games in a row.
Gotta keep the body right. First of all, Demario Davis coming at you with pads on is scary enough on a football field. Yeah. That guy coming at you on a basketball court, I just got an image of that.
Right, yeah.
What is that? What is he like on a basketball court? Just as intimidating?
If I could describe him, man, he's like a shooting Ben Wallace.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? Like,
right, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of like who he is, man. But, I mean, he's intimidating without his pads on. I'll tell you that. So he's just built different.
Yeah, got to keep the body right at y'all's age. But you mentioned some of the new guys that have come in. You've also welcomed in 2 new coaches, a new defensive coordinator, new secondaries coach as well. Have you been able to meet with them? Yeah. What have those conversations look like?
Yeah, so, actually, Joe Woods actually he interviewed me when I came out, when I came out of LSU. So
Really?
I always admired him. Obviously, him being able to put together the secondary he did in Denver. I think those guys, well, if you think about the 2010s, you'll probably say Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
The 49ers had some good secondaries, and Denver too. And I think the Cardinals too when, we was in, Arizona with Patrick Peterson and all us. But, I probably say like those were the 5 secondaries that you kind of, you wanted to watch. So, he's always been a coach that, knows how to motivate his players, knows how to get, the secondary playing, at a high level. And, even Coach Emrod, I've had a chance to talk with him. And, I think anybody that's, played in this league 10 years and, had some success and then transition to coaching is always somebody that you can, learn a lot from. So he's intense. You know what I mean? Like he's passionate. So I like that.
Is there a comfort level there then with Joe Woods having already gone through an interview process with him?
Yeah. I think, well, it makes it easier, for you to communicate with these guys, talk to them. And, like I said, that's a big part of it, trying to be a great team, a great defense, even a great offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's that communication between players and coaches. So, I see it going well for us.
Yeah, that was one of the surprises, I think, of the offseason is seeing Richard get let go. Is there just room for improvement for how everything operates? Was there maybe a little, I don't know, one of the words I heard was a lack of harmony maybe in how everything ran? Is it possible for it to be a little bit smoother with just some of the new guys coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. And, I think, not to take nothing away from, Chris, I think he's, one of the better coaches I've ever been around. Just from a schematic standpoint, fundamentally, he just knows how to get you, in the right, mindset to go out there and win the battle. You know what I mean? So we had a lot of injuries last year, man.
Yeah, true.
Like, so, it was kind of, I've played with like 3-4 different safeties. You know what I mean? So, and I'm pretty sure the corners could say the same. So, just really looking forward to, all us being, hands on deck this year and, obviously coaches as well.
And I'm sorry, if you went back and you looked at last season and there's outside of the injuries, maybe 3 or 4 bullet points of like, okay, we could do this better. What would a couple of those things be?
Well, I think we have enough talent, in the back end especially. And I think we have enough athletes too. Like we should have caught way more, interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
We should have forced way more fumbles. Obviously the missed tackles, especially early in the season, like I think that was the reason we lost a few games as well too. So if you could do that well and obviously stay healthy, we'd probably been the number 1 secondary last season.
With that, how does it change in year 2 with Marcus May as far as understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses, and 2, even how you guys are going to play off of each other? Is it better in year 2 and with that?
Yeah, I mean, you would like to think so, and really hope so. Obviously, both of us are veteran players,
right.
And
I guess the better way to ask it is: there a better understanding of the way each other play and how you guys can play off each other?
Absolutely, and I think coming into obviously the second year too, like it's a comfort level too. Because I hadn't played much deep safety. You know what I mean? So, and I haven't played much quarter 4 safety. So. Obviously Marcus played that, in New York much more than I did. So I think me having that year, under my belt, just understanding the scheme from, depth, I think that'll help us out too.
To not have a traditional strong and free safety in this defense, we know Dennis Allen likes to kind of interchange the safeties a lot. Is that where communication comes into play? Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. And, obviously, just continuing to get to know each other, continuing to, watch film with each other, hang out with each other outside the building, and, always talk football. I think, all that'll help us out.
And one of the big reasons of optimism, I think, for us outside of the team last year was Alontae Taylor and how he played and just being with him, practicing with him, seeing how he studies. What should people expect from him in year 2? And what are some of the things that you thought he did really well last year?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, I think he's going to be one of those dudes, for a long time. And, like I said, I've played with, some of the best players, of my generation. I've played with Patrick Peterson and, even LeJarry Sneed in Kansas City, like, Jonathan Josephs of the world. Like, I played with guys that, made Pro Bowls and All Pros and, had a lot of success. And You know, I had a chance to play with Lack, you know, last year. Like, I think he represents, he comes from that mold. So, you know, he's motivated. Like, he's still motivated. So that's what you like to see. You know, I think a lot of guys have success in their rookie year and they kind of, you know, take their foot off the pedal a little bit. But, you know, he's been at workouts every day. Like he's hungry to get back to it.
No, that's like a big statement. Like those are some huge names you're saying there. Are there commonalities between that you see in cornerbacks, like a couple traits that make the special ones kind of special?
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously ball skills. You know, you have to be able to get your hands on footballs. You know, I think, you know, how can you affect receivers at the line of scrimmage? You know, can you backpedal? Can you flip and turn and run? Do you have long speed? You know, can you cover deep balls 4 times? I think Alante covered like a deep ball 4 times in a row last year. So you love to see that from cornerbacks. But, you know, I think mostly, you know, how can you impact the number 1 receiver? And I think he had a lot of chances last year, you know, where he was matched up against Devontae Adams and Hopkins, like, and he held his own. So that's what you love to see.
You mentioned motivation. I want to take you back to the Pittsburgh Steelers loss in the locker room. I think that was the first time we really had a very honest moment with you, asking you about that game. And you said, we're just not a good football team right now.
Yeah.
That's what the conversation was between media and player. When we leave the locker room, what do those conversations look like among the leaders in the locker room? Or is it not even in that moment yet? Is it in defensive meetings later in that week? When you guys were having your struggles, what do those conversations look like when we're not there?
Well, I think they're real. You know, I think we're probably, you know, saying words that, you know, we can't say on TV. You know? So, you know, and, you know, I think it happens like immediately, you know, as we're walking to the bus, you know, as we're sitting on the bus. You know, I think a lot of our heart-to-hearts came, you know, either on the bus headed to the plane or, you know, in a defensive, you know, meeting room. So, you know, and we got enough guys in that room to where, you know, I think, you know, if they open their mouth and they say something like it's coming from a genuine place, it's coming from, you know, an honest place. So, you know, it's easy to respect it and try your best to fix it.
A lot of it, too, I think, you know, with any team, no matter what sport, it's understanding each other's personalities, too, understanding chemistry, when somebody's coming at you, where they're coming from.
Right.
Did you feel like everybody was heard on the defense? Like if a rookie wanted to speak up and be like, this is why we're struggling against team, this is why we're that close to winning games. Was that there?
Well, I think we have enough, you know, like I said, you know, guys that have respect, you know, for one another to where, you know, I think if anybody said something, you know, it could have came from the training staff. You know what I mean? Like we would have tried our best to take heed to it.
How do you guys be the team you want to be this year? I'm assuming last year defensive numbers were all great, but I'm guessing the turnovers, lack of production, the lack of wins.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it sounds like you think the talent is there on the team. How do you guys achieve it and end the season not feeling like, you know, you didn't quite get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you have to take the preparation, you know, to the next level. And, you know, I think we prepare, you know, outstanding here. I think we practice, you know, amazing here. But, you know, I think it's always another level. You know, I think it's always, you know, we can definitely challenge each other more, you know, set goals amongst each other that, you know, we hold each other accountable, you know, on reaching. So, you know, if we can do that, man, I think we'll be much better. You know, I think we're already off to a good start this year. You know, a lot of guys are at the off-season workouts and, you know, a lot of guys are putting their hand in the pile and they're walking around saying, you know, we got to get to the playoffs. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's what you want to see.
How has Dennis Allen been communicating those things with the players? Did you see maybe a difference in him taking this team over, obviously, in his first year? Was there a change at some point in the season where you heard his voice more, or it carried a little bit more weight?
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously it's a pretty sure, I don't want to speak for him, but, you know, I'm pretty sure it's probably a huge transition for him as well, too. You know, I think, you know, Sean Payton has been, you know, a staple here, you know, for so long, and, you know, just being the face of, you know, the New Orleans Saints football. So, but, you know, I think as the year went on, for sure, like you heard more of his voice. You know, he demanded more. He challenged us more. You know, I remember him challenging me like mid-game, like, you know what I mean? And that's what you want. That's what you want from coaches. You know what I mean? Especially when you know, you want to be a good player.
So he's kind of vanilla with us. I think that's fair to say, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine. Look, but you mentioned he's coming at you in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
What's he saying?
Well, you know, I think I dropped a few picks last year. You know what I mean? So, like, and he was like, yo, catch him. You know what I mean? So, because I catch him all in practice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, it's just fun, man, to be around a coach that, challenges you, wants the best for you, but know that you can do it.
What's it sound like when he lights someone up? Because I think the biggest criticism that fans have is that it looks like he's just on the sideline, stoic.
Or even it comes off disinterested sometimes.
Nah, well, I think he, obviously he's the head coach now. I think you have to have, a certain level of composure. But, too, I think he has like a great staff. You know what I mean? And so, I think he puts his coaches in a position to do their job. You know what I mean? So he's not trying to like do everybody's job. So, but once we get in the defensive meeting room, like it's his show. Sure.
Yeah. One of the problems for him is I think Sean's like composure wasn't part of his repertoire at all. So he's like on the sideline skull clapping and all that, doing the choke sign, and DA's is kind of normal. It probably works against him.
He's worried about getting after his players is what it sounds like, making sure you guys are juiced up.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get into a little rapid fire segment. You up for that?
Cool, let's do it.
Okay, it's going to be New Orleans style.
Oh, okay.
You ready for this?
I hope I don't let them down.
Well, look, you haven't let them down. It seems like that you have been, all three of us can agree, Mike, Nick, and myself, you're kind of the ambassador for some of these new players of this is what you need to do and expect to do when you get to New Orleans, not put barbecue sauce, right?
No.
Come on.
No.
That was nasty. That was nasty.
Off the top of your head, we'll start with an easy one. What are 3 no-nos for any rookies that come into New Orleans?
3 no-nos?
Like, cannot do. New Orleans fans are going to have a problem with it. It can be food related. It can be any music they listen to, all of that.
Oh, man. Let me think. What is this rapid fire? I would probably say you can't ever support the Falcons.
Fair?
Ever. I think if somebody asks you who's your favorite musician, I think you should possibly mention somebody from the New Orleans area. What else? Just don't talk bad about the food.
Yeah, don't.
Oh, yeah, you can't talk bad about food.
Like ever.
All right, well, then we'll get into the rapid fire segment of this. Go-to snowball stand.
Go-to snowball stand? Oh, man, I'd probably say Pandora's.
Favorite high school team to play?
Favorite high school team to play against? Oh, man, I love playing against Brother Martin. I just hated him.
All right. Best New Orleans song on the radio?
Best New Orleans song on the radio? Ever?
I'd
probably say it was Bling Bling.
All right. Cash Money or No Limit?
I'd probably say Cash Money.
Okay.
When you were here, best parade?
Best parade? Oh, man. I'm torn. I like Zulu and I like Bacchus.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan. I'm signed to Jordan.
Yeah, obviously we've got him up. We got him up on the wall.
Huh?
What's the best Jordan?
I'd probably say the ones.
Okay.
Yeah, Jordan ones.
Drums or flats?
Drums.
All right, this is a personality question. Best candy?
Best candy? Wow.
I know Nick's waiting on this one.
I'd probably say Jolly Rancher.
Okay.
See,
all right. What color?
I'd probably say blue.
Oh, you got to go green.
Blue or red?
Blue is a solid choice.
Really
That's like the blue Sour Patch. Yeah.
We're philosophically opposed here.
But you wouldn't have ever said Twizzlers, right?
No.
Thank you. All right, there we go. It's a good
candy.
Well, Tyrann, thank you so much for joining us, and hey, best of luck this season.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Yep.
All right, we got Mike back. Tyrann had so many interesting things to say. What was the one thing that stood out most to you, Mike?
That I might lose my seat if he wants to take over. He wore it better than I did, I think. But look, he had the same. I think he had the same standard for the defense that we had. It wasn't good enough for them either. But that's no surprise. The most entertaining stuff I'd never heard before, though, was the basketball review.
Yeah.
Without question, the basketball reviews.
For sure, and the fact I think too, he kind of brought us in a little bit on some things, which I really liked, and I think fans will appreciate when they watch this. Also, he has a relationship with Joe Woods. The fact that Joe Woods interviewed him coming out of LSU, I think that speaks volumes for the defensive coordinator they are getting and maybe some chemistry that's already been built.
Yeah, for me, with all due respect to Master P, Cash Money is killing him. So at least Tyrann has good music taste. So we definitely know that he was on point there.
And Matthew's not going to be the only Saints player we have on NewOrleans.Football. We're going to be bringing guys in throughout the year as we gear up for training camp. Thanks for joining us on another episode of NewOrleans.Football. We'll see you next time.